So the other day, my co-author and I were having a little bit of a discussion on the concept of the Passionate Pantheon as a modern-day fairy tale. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, clearly I don't mean the little babies with the gossamer wings at the bottom of the garden. When I talk about fairies, what I mean is the old fae, the traditional mythologies. And there's a number of interesting points that come up in those old mythologies that I thought tracked pretty similarly to the residents of the cities in the Passionate Pantheon. Now you might be thinking, I don't see it. So let's go through a few points. Number one, magic. Everyone knows fairies have magic. But if you look at the Passionate Pantheon, between the providers that basically give you almost any material item you want, and the medpods which will cure pretty much anything short of actual instantaneous death, wouldn't you say that's pretty much magic? Like, if you'd actually asked the people who were telling these stories hundreds of years ago, they'd have said that was magic as well, I reckon. And talking about medpods, one thing that we know about the Fae in those old mythologies is that they were shapeshifters. They would transform themselves. But they would use glamours and spells and magic. The residents of the cities, they would jump into a medpod and they could change their bodies to make them more beautiful. We have people with bioluminescent body decoration. We have people with tattoos that move across their skin. We have people with snakes for hair. We have people who have wings. All of these sorts of decorative features that you can jump into a medpod and create for yourself. They're not using magic and glamours, but functionally it's practically the same. Now, a third thing that occurred to me was that beauty was a really interesting concept that came up in both, right? We know that the Fae in these old mythologies, it's again and again suggested that they really love beauty. They collect people who are beautiful. They collect song and magic and music that's beautiful. Beauty is something that really matters to them. And in the same way, the residents of the city in the Passionate Pantheon really care about beauty. The most tiny, mundane item is still created to be utterly gorgeous and beautiful, even if it's going to be discarded back into a provider immediately after it's used. So at this point, you may be thinking, I don't know about this. So here's another one. One of the things that they tell you not to do with the old Fae is give them your name. Names have power. So in these old mythologies, you don't tell them your full name, because if you tell them your name, they now have power over you. And in many of the same ways in the city, names are powerful. They don't have power in the same way, but you would never, ever consider giving somebody your private name unless they really, really matter to you. This is the deepest intimacy you could possibly share, is to share your private name. So names still have power there. And I think the thing that finally clinched it for me is the power of truth and oaths. In both the old Fae mythology and in the Passionate Pantheon, you do not tell lies. You do not give false promises. You do not actively lie. Now, in the old mythology, you had to be very, very careful when talking to the Fae because, if you promised something, they would collect. Whether or not that's what you actually intended with your words, they would collect to the letter of the law. Now, in the city of the Passionate Pantheon, you don't make false promises and you don't lie, because those are two of the biggest taboos, the biggest transgressions you can make. Those are so bad that they matter more than practically anything else that you can do. And if you do that, especially if you do that repeatedly, you will get found out and there will be consequences. But there's nothing to say that you can't be a little bit creative with how you say things. And we do see some characters doing that in some of the books in the Passionate Pantheon. And so if you've heard all of this and you think, oh, I don't know, I think this is still a little bit ridiculous. Well, I'd love to know what you think, because when I looked at all of this, I saw a world where we are seeing the Fae, but from the inside, through their own eyes. What does it mean to be a Fae living in that culture? If you think it's ridiculous, let me know. We will be putting out a blog post on this so that I can be a little less rambly and a little more coherent. So jump over to there as well and see if there's anything that interests you there. So, bye.